Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to today's show. Thank you for making time and clicking on that link. Now, again, just a quick update before we start. We have new streaming channels and networks for you to check out as well. So, if you are a heavy user on LinkedIn, we will be streaming on LinkedIn live as well, but that's only from next week. This week, we have started streaming live on Facebook as well. So if you are that avid Facebook person and you can't get away from Facebook, do check us out, LATOKEN Facebook channel, official channels, all down in the link below. Now, if you're coming to us from our main page itself, again, do remember links to all the next shows and every upcoming episode is there for you to go back, check, and plan. I am Terrence. This is VCTV by LATOKEN. Again, welcome and thank you for spending time. Today on the panel, we have none other than Karthik himself. You may have seen him on some of our previous shows. Today, I'm going to have a chat with him. It's going to be a fiery chat with Karthik. So, we are going to talk about a few big words that you see here today. We're going to talk about TransTech, that's transformational technology, life expansion, fitness, sports well being, sustainability. It all resolves around and revolves around eating well and that healthy well being and being healthy all around. So it's a very timely discussion. Before, without any further ado, again, I'm going to bring in Karthik to then introduce himself and talk about some of the companies that he represents. Karthik, over to you.
Thank you so much, Terence. It's been a pleasure always to be on shows with you, Sony, Carol. It's always been a pleasure. And as I continue to count, it's show number 28, and it only gets better every day. And today we are on a fireside chat. Lovely.
Yeah,
So over the last
great.
weeks, just to give you a quick introduction, I wear multiple hats. I am a CEO of a large retail business. I've been a CEO of a couple of healthcare businesses. I am a board member of a few VC and early startup incubators. And I represent two family offices based out of Western Europe who have very active investments going into South Asia and Middle East. And apart from that, as an investor, I've been actively involved in the health tech space to a certain extent, and now getting into the data analytics space. So that's a quick background about me and being in this show and trying to help people bridge the gap between an aspiration and the ability to raise dollars so as to make their business ideas and the dreams come true, and more importantly, get a varied exposure to developments which were hitherto unexplored across. For example, we've been exploring developments in Cambodia, we have spoken to people in Peru, we are discussing about developments that are coming in from as far as New Zealand. So this is what VCTV and you guys have made it possible through this platform, and I think you've been doing a fabulous job. So that's a quick introduction about me.
Thank you, Karthik, and welcome back on the show. It's great having you here. And again, let's have the chat almost on the business of well being and transformative technology, as we put it. Let's try to define the space. I like how you define yesterday's episode in terms of putting it in a structured format almost. So let's talk about that technology and the technologies that you see, and how would you kind of put it?
So, 2 years ago, or 2 to 3 years ago,
Hmm.
there wasn't anything specifically defined as transformative tech.
Hmm.
Technology was an omnibus that was used to improve your way of being. Now, your way of being improves all the way from digging holes to going into space and predicting and forecasting weather. That varied and that wide the entire technology space was. So, businesses and companies and rather more sector leaders started clubbing or siloing technologies, and came health tech,
Hmm.
everything that's going into the health space, fintech that's going into finance and banking tech, sport tech which went into the sport industry. We went into the e-commerce tech. Edutech is a last 6 months phenomenon. We talk about gaming, entertainment. Now, transformative tech is primarily the origin of technology, or the genesis of technology, as I call it.
Hmm.
The reason why we all imbibe and help technology evolution is to make our lives better. Now, the way we look at making our life better is from a general course of being, wellness, mental state that we are in, our state of inertia of doing things the right way. And that is what transformative tech sums up in its entirety. How do we take away the pains and the stresses and the inhibitions that human beings or people have at various junctures in their life and look at an entire holistic well being? Now, the moment you look at transformative tech, it gets into ease of doing tech and the wellness or the health tech space, and one needs to understand how does this help. You cannot club a Alexa or a Google Home with your health tech, which necessarily manages your sleep patterns, and your wellness tech that helps you identify or use your wearables to measure the way your life has been moving in. But all of it is necessarily clubbed into the transformative tech as an entire bucket or as an industry we see. If we were to break this down into multiple elements, let's start by understanding transformative tech from a ease of doing things. Ease of doing things is where the Internet of Thing leads us, which is typically man being replaced by machine. How does a machine replace man? The moment you replace a man with a machine, you need to start building in artificial intelligence. So the artificial intelligence and the Internet of Things are two brothers in arms that build the entire ease of doing algorithm. Then you get into Alexa, which powers everything through voice. You bring in Google, which starts powering everything through voice. So you have Internet of Things, you have artificial intelligence. Right at the bottom is an engine of powering it through voice. That makes up ease of doing things. The other end of ease of doing things is your labor intensive, task intensive, which is where robotics has started bringing in a lot of change in your transformative tech. Now, transformative tech, in terms of its evolution, is a few generations ahead of the regular robotics. So, if your regular robotics typically helps your warehouse solutions or your OCR or your communication solutions, a transformative tech robotic would go all the way into computer aided and robot aided surgeries, computer aided laparoscopic performance, computer aided or robotic aided aircraft landings and aircraft takeoffs, or computer aided military precision, which is typically a drone technology, as we call it. So it goes into that level of computing and that level of technological ease. So that is the ease of doing things from the transformative space. Come into the ease of well-being or the well-being space. Now, the well-being space is very vividly divided into the being space, the curative space, the preventive space, and the wellness space. So, even if you were to stay into the preventive and the curative and the wellness space, we are talking about wearables as one of the largest elements of the transformation technology bucket, which is typically about monitoring your wellness, not about just building your wellness, monitoring your wellness, your heartbeat, your glucose levels, your blood pressure, even your sleep patterns, including how much water do you drink, your calorie readers, how often do you sleep, how often do you wink, how often does your muscle twitch, is all of it is measured, not only to help you build a better life and help you get into a higher fitness quotient, but also in certain chronic illnesses and chronic conditions to prevent from any fatality and to prevent from any extremities happening. So that is where the wellness and the wearable space is coming in. Changes in this space have been significant. What started with a Garmin device a few years ago has now gone into Fitbit being taken over by Google and AI
Yeah.
powered, where your wearable device becomes your beacon every day and it tells you exactly what you need to do. So it becomes your ringmaster and you become a pawn, executing
Yeah.
exactly what your wearable tells you.
Yeah.
Go into a monitoring space. Your sleep apnea patients, people who have breathing disorders, people who have pattern disorders, lifestyle pattern disorders, people who have metabolism disorders, all of these metabolism, sleep pattern, breathing, sleeping patterns, all of them are observed through a transformative tech which keeps a check on where they are, where their being is. Then you take the tech into the next level of transformation, which is about improving your social ecosystem and improving your environmental or your lifestyle around you. And that is where you get into clean environment tech, clean future tech, clean water tech, clean social ecosystem tech, which is all about bringing in a transformation in your environment and your way of being. That's how you typically club the entire transformative tech, at least in a very common or human parlance, is how I would define it, Terence.
Hmm. Hmm. I think that's a great way to kind of break it down as well. And you're rightly so in mentioning that. I think that wearable tech, that's your first level entry into the whole ecosystem as well. And we are somewhat now addicted in sometimes looking at those facts, figures, and where we are heading and tracking our fitness. And that's in a way a good way to kind of move forward as well. But is there any unmet areas or needs at the moment that you think are visible
So
now?
there is a lot of work happening in the security tech space, though it has still
Mm,
not come into the transformation security tech. And
mm,
there is a huge divide between the first world and the third world in terms of perception of security. The first world still continues perception of security as your satellites trying to prevent terrorist attacks and drone attacks into your neighborhoods. But what the third world security is typically is your neighborhood watch. Now, neighborhood watch, primarily in certain parts of the world, has become very, very tech driven with predictive logics of CCTV cameras, supervision by. So, what typically used to be done by the security forces in supervising certain neighborhoods is now
mm,
being built through artificial intelligence and through data pointers about what are areas that are sensitive to security and law and order threats, what are areas that are sensitive to human endangerment, or what are areas that are sensitive to loss of risk of life or unwanted or unwarranted activities happening in the neighborhood. And basis that,
mm,
deployment of people, deployment of resources is being done. It's a very, very niche segment, but certain parts, and primarily certain parts of subcontinent India, certain parts of South Africa, certain parts of Eastern Europe have seen massive investment in last 3 to 4 years in this kind of a transformative tech. It is still to become democratic, as I always say, because it's a very, very, I would say, very niche category with massive investments and massive government support that needs to be built into this. But otherwise, this is one area which requires a lot of support and a lot of growth. It's as a growth driver for the business.
right. And you always talk about kind of looking into the future as well. Do you see some of the companies coming about now? Are they kind of challenging or changing that well-being space? Or
Absolutely,
yeah,
absolutely. I
could
see,
you
and
tell us more? Mm,
And if I were to define this space, Terence, there's a lot of
mm,
activity happening in the genome space, the gene pool space, and
mm-hmm,
about building in a lot of intelligence in the genetic well-being, which is typically what the Einstein's theory a lot of years ago spoke about, which is the theory of relativity, where something travels faster than light, and if people go into past, and if you kill somebody in the past, how would you be born? That's a question that Einstein asked, and nobody could answer that. You bring it
right.
back to reality today, and Terence, you talk about the genome pool. You
Mm,
build a predictive logic in the pool to such a level that you are able to predict not only the lifestyle and behavioral pattern, but even
mm,
intelligence quotient of your at least next 2 generations, considering that your genome pool and your variants remain more or less similar. A lot of work
mm,
has been done in this, but then this technology necessarily is controlled by a few capitalistic nations and few capitalistic organizations, primarily because this is a disruption of unforeseen. I mean, this is an unforeseen disruption. We've never seen something like this in the past. What
mm,
nuclear fission and what nuclear bombs was a phenomenon in the 40s is what a genome classification in the 2020s and 2030s is likely to be. But there's a
mm.
lot of research happening in this space, especially in the UK and in France.
Right, right. And that is also kind of paving the way into leading and lagging countries as well. So which are areas or countries that are lagging behind here? I mean, what's your thoughts on this one?
So there's a lot of development that, again, as I told you yesterday, technology has two variants. There's an innovator and then there's a multiplier. An innovator typically, especially in the smart tech or the transformative tech, historically has been the US, has been UK, has been Australia, has been France, has been Germany. And
Mm,
technology multiplier historically has been Latin America. A very late multiplier has been Africa, and to a certain extent, it has been South Asia and subcontinent. Unfortunately, in the transformation technology, we haven't seen a lot of development coming out of mainland China. Though there has been a lot of technology development, it's because also about the quality indexing of life. What
Mm.
matters in terms of elements of life to certain parts of the world doesn't necessarily matter to certain other parts of the world. And hence, indexing of smart technology or indexing of transformative technology varies from nation to nation. But primarily, health tech, well-being, sustainable living, or as you call a sustainable nutrition, as we call it, hasn't come
Mm.
into a mainstream in certain parts of the world. It is becoming a phenomenon considering healthy living and life expectancy is increasing in certain nations, primarily in the subcontinent Asia as well as South Asia. I think it is something that might happen by maybe 2025, 2030. But at the
Mm.
moment, it is still a Western European and a North American phenomenon.
Right. And again, with the advent and growth of tech in everything as well, I think that social interaction bit with technology and robots and AIs coming in, they are more emotionally aware at least. I mean, what's your thought on this? Do you see lots of businesses coming in this sector then?
So historically, people could not react to certain situations. Today, what social ecosystems and social technologies have become is a
Mm-hmm.
bridge between two people. When people across the world or across nations or across ecosystems, when they lost the ability to empathize, sympathize, connect, and build
Mm.
human touch, is what is being done by this intermediate layer, what we call as an emoji or what we call as an emoticon or what we call as a auto reminder in terms of a greet or what we call
Mm.
as person to person interaction technology is what is trying to bring people and bridge the gap, which we call it in a psychological parlance, we call it the gap of awkwardness, which
Mm.
is really about when you don't know how to handle a particular situation or when you don't know how to handle a particular interaction. It is
Mm.
this gap of awkwardness is being bridged by a lot of social technology, and transformative technology necessarily also bridges on social indexing and social understanding that today the human mind is either not able to fathom or is not able to cope up with.
Right.
We see a
And
lot of developments coming in because primarily social indexing is a very regional phenomenon. The way you react to something in India versus the way you react to something in Malaysia versus the way you react to something in North America is going to be very different, and hence the entire technology has to be very regionalized, localized rather than being global.
got it. And also with the growth of this and with more people coming in, and I see kind of the lack of that social interaction almost. Is digital mental health a thing now? Because before the show, I was kind of reading about it, and that's becoming a problem as well. And are there companies actually out there kind of
A
coming
lot
out
of
with
them.
this?
A lot of them. You would be surprised. One of
Yeah.
the IPOs that came in into if you are into the digital space, you would come across a very simple app that tells you to sleep and a very simple app that tells you to
Right.
calm. These
Hmm.
apps have seen IPOs and fundings that have gone into millions because that is necessary. The cooling effect, as we call it on any phenomenon, is that these are the phenomenons that bring in the cooling effect.
Hmm.
Cyberbullying, cyber detoxing, personal detoxing, human detoxing through tech, through music, through engagement, through gamification, or through even social involvement is becoming a lot of, I would say, it is becoming a placebo or is becoming a way of life. For historically, what a way of life for us to unwind was to go to a club or play a sport or read a book. Today, virtual relaxations, virtual placebos, virtual de-risking, virtual detoxification is becoming a way of life. And there, I don't think a lot of technology has built, but
Hmm.
technology at a very generic level in terms of trying to build and maintain and strengthen your mental balances has been built. But unfortunately or fortunately, this is going to take a lot of time to come in because there's going to be a lot of personalization. What detoxes you versus what detoxes me versus what calms Carol are going to be three different thoughts, three different philosophies, three different fundamentals. And
Hmm.
instead of having a very standard response to a stimuli, one would need to have a very personalized and situational response to a stimuli. And hence, it needs to be imbibed into you, and the technology has to be a part of you for the entire eco existence. and then it needs to come back to you with a solution as and when you need it. So it's going to take a lot of time. It is, as I call it, in terms of advancement of technology, it's almost as close as beam me up Scotty. So that's it. There's a long way to go for that.
Okay. And to that as well, I think what's next for human well-being and how can kind of tech support us through COVID and beyond? I mean, before this, we were talking about the end of COVID, and then now the second strain has comes out. So what's next?
So if you see the second strain, and I would love to have Gary on one of these shows to discuss this, Terence. The reason being is what Gary does is exactly what the second strain has done. Why was the second
Okay.
strain localized, and why were flight and travel patterns built to a level of perfection to lock only 13 nations out of the 210 nations on this planet? Is because of the use of technology and data. It has been
Right.
predicted to a level of accuracy that we have never seen before, that people from certain parts of the world could have only reached these geographies, traveled only to these geographies. This is the immune system, this is the strain, this is the meta strain that is going to
Mhm.
impact people with a precision of only a 14-day window to lock down nations. Imagine the world is not ready for a second lockdown. And the way
Right.
it has been done, from September, it has been observed, it has multiplied, it was localized to a particular geography without creating an iota of panic. Waited till the end of December to see whether it multiplies. And the moment it started multiplying, only 13 nations across the world have been put on high alert, and travel has been
Hmm.
banned from those geographies rather than putting the entire world on a lockdown. Now, that to me is technology. And
Right.
that is the response to a stimuli that what in 2020 early we were not ready, but by
Hmm.
2020 end we were not only ready, we were able to combat it with an extremely high degree of precision. And that to me is advancement in technology, quantum leap in technology.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. And we are definitely aiding that by kind of giving out the data and making sure that's
If you
available
see the
itself.
jump for the well-being in technology and health tech has pioneered this entire space of well-being. If you look at in terms of
Hmm.
surgical procedures across the world were stunted in May, March, April, May, June, July. 40
Hmm.
hospitals between Europe and North America could conduct 1.2 million surgical procedures across North America and Europe through remote management, robotics, and through imaging technologies and peer to peer support. Now, that to me is a technology which was hitherto non democratized, non used. Everybody was happy to travel to a Woodrow Wilson or a Boston Memorial, pay 50, 70, $200,000 to get a surgical procedure done. Today, the same Woodrow Wilson medical practitioner can be made available on a peer-to-peer network or a virtual network in Mumbai and do surgical procedures on people. Now, that to
Hmm.
me is an advancement in technology. An
Right.
advancement in technology today is if I have to go on a particular intermittent fasting or if I have to go on a particular regime, I would follow a diet planner who would give me a particular understanding of Mr. But you weigh XYZ, you go on intermittent fasting, have one spoon of this, one bowl of this. But technology has taken it to a level where exact quantity of vitamins, exact quantity of nutrients can be prepared for me in a capsule and can be made available, not as a
Right.
supplement to food, but as a way of living for me. Now, that to
Right.
me is technology. What hyperbolic food processing is what technology is. Dehydrated food, which was a generation and a half old in terms of food tech, has now moved on to hyperbaric technology, which is where the businesses have been moving. So you have food semi-prepared, you just twist the canister, food
Hmm.
automatically boils, it takes care of all the pasteurization and it takes care of all your sanitation, and your 100% germ-free food is available in any part of the world. To me, that is advancement in well-being and technical advancement. Your work purifiers, which are typically your OW purifiers as they are called, which is
Hmm.
a 5-gram capsule you put into a bottle. It is odorless, colorless purification of water anywhere in the world, and it makes it 100% pure, not 99.7. It's 100% pure water, which can
Hmm.
take care of every possible bacteria, every possible protozoa. That to me is technology bringing in a sea change in the way we live.
Right. And again, just following up on your point itself, I want to know your thoughts on this one. In terms of sectors, in terms of industries, definitely the health side is benefiting as well. But what about the rest? Like, say, what about your modern city, or what about travel, mindful travel next? I mean, are you seeing, or what are you envisioning in the future when we talk about all this technology being integrated
So
inside?
you would have heard of the Chinese 100-kilometer traffic jam that happened in
Yeah, yeah,
2017,
yeah. It's
2000.
for days, I think,
Yeah,
right?
it was a 100-kilometer traffic jam that took them 11 days to get.
Right, right.
It was 1.7 million vehicles caught in a queue.
Mm,
Today, China manages the entire traffic through 42 satellites that it owns on a co hosted basis, which means it takes them 27 to 30 seconds to find out exactly where a traffic jam is likely to happen. Technology has moved significantly away, and this is something I want to get all your users to understand, and more importantly, your startup enthusiasts to understand.
mm,
Don't be a tech follower. Don't be a tech multiplier. Be a tech innovator. Technology as a reactive mechanism is passe. Technology
mm,
as a proactive, predictive mechanism. Don't come into fire. Don't come into fight the fire after the fire is on. Make sure the fire doesn't come, or make sure the business building doesn't get lit. That is what technology needs to do, which is where we
mm,
come to understanding of traffic patterns, we come into understanding of social patterns, we come into understanding of crime and law and order in society, we come into even understanding of tourist patterns. Vatican installs an amazing tourist, I wouldn't call it a tech, but a tourist
mm,
monitoring system which makes sure that in line with the expected tourist over a particular period, a particular week, integrated with the charters that come into it and integrated with the tourist inflow through different routes, because it being a
mm,
very small ecosystem, all the civil expectations, requirements, and dispensations are managed through that one traffic, which is the tourist monitoring body, which predicts to a very certain or a very accurate level of what number of people are expected, and hence the entire ecosystem works seamlessly.
right. And what?
It could
Uh,
not, but maybe sure by the time the next Hajj is in place, they would be able to
mm,
build this logic in place.
yeah, I think that will be definitely helpful as well. But again, to your questions, what would you kind of advise the businesses out there and those coming up at the moment? Would you advise them to spend more time and money on that research and understanding cutting edge
This,
technology?
this, see, unlike any other tech,
Right.
this is a human tech. You're talking about empowering and re-engineering the human space. This
Mm,
is this is definitely a question answer tech. I have a
mm,
challenge, you need to give me an answer to that. If you are able to give me an answer to a challenge which I have never even faced,
mm,
and if you come up with an innovative solution to that, then you are freeing up a lot of my time, you're freeing up a lot of my anxiety, you're freeing up a lot of my effort, you're creating a space of a utopian well-being space for me to do a lot of other things at the same time. When you free up a lot of my time, trust me, there's a lot
mm,
of other tech coming in to use my time productively. Gamification is one of those spaces, esports is one of those spaces, learning
mm,
is one of those spaces. So while transformative tech takes away my current way of current burden, stress, and unwell-being from me, there is a lot of
mhm.
tech that comes in to occupy that slot or that window that is left unopened or left open.
Right.
So for businesses and startups, this is a very intuitive space to be, a very I'm so sorry. This is a space where you need to really learn very localized simulations. You would not have a global solution to this, and there would hardly be, apart from Alexas of the world, or or for that matter, even your wearable space. The
Mm,
well-being space necessarily needs to be as open and as localized as it can be. Today's
mm,
challenges in the cyber world are primarily about your social ecosystems. If you are able to build in social tech, if you are able to
mhm,
integrate society as a whole and build technology around it to make human to human interactions better. Because while wearables are able to take care of nutrition and supplements, stay able to take care of your food and your physical wellness, your social ecosystem, your mental wellness, your stress, your anxiety is the bigger challenge. And hence there's a lot of technical or technological advancement available and possible in this space.
Right. And speaking of localization as well, kind of honing down to country specific, is and which are the countries you think that have given that guidance, law, or even framework to kind of prepare its citizen to kind of move forward with this tech? Do you think they're lagging behind, or who
So
should we be looking at?
a lot of countries are lagging behind, primarily,
Mm,
Terence, because well-being is a next step in our social ecosystem. Today, we have half the world which is in the have not space, have not in the materialistic space. When the world is in a materialistic have not space, expecting them to move into a well being state is a quantum jump. But a well being state which becomes a way of life in certain parts of the world, which are
mm,
aspirational, inspirational, and weakens, it would necessarily, as generations, maybe a couple of generations as they pass, would become a way of living in the rest of the world as well. What
mm,
started as a tech revolution, food revolution, learning revolution, education revolution, professionalization revolution in Western Europe percolated down to the world, and the world imbibed in its own manner and created its own flavors.
mm,
Well-being also become one of them. What yoga does on an e-platform to your mental statuses, with yoga teachers enabling well-being across the world, is
mm,
what personal trainers and Zumba and Pilates does to anywhere else in another part of the world. So it's the same well-being which is democratized in a very different manner in two different geographies. What Alexa
mm,
does here is what something else is what Carrefour is doing with Google Home in some other part of the world. What Apple Watch does here is what hospitals are doing with their own personalized devices in Japanese that is being given away free to people in certain parts of Japan, which are away from medical technologies, to just to make sure that that well-being are monitored free of cost. So it is location based, people based, society based, culture based.
right, right. And Karthik, just to kind of get your views on this as well, let's talk a little bit about the companies coming up in this ecosystem at the moment. Most of them, like you mentioned, need that almost that radical acceleration. So, what should they be looking forward to or paying attention to, and what's your advice to them to kind of get there and look at what's next, not just what we have at the moment?
So two things. One is Terence,
Mm,
irrespective of where they wish to be in the technology story, they need to
mm,
use the building blocks of technology. Even if you want to build space tech, you cannot send a man on to sun until unless you've got the fundamentals right. Necessarily
right.
follow the building blocks, and to the smart tech and to the transformative tech, the building blocks are unfortunately or fortunately very limited. You need to get into the genome cracking. You need to get into AIML at a
Mm,
fundamental level. AIML becomes the power or the electricity behind the technology, as Gary always says that. And I
mm,
love what he says. Quantum computing would always be in this space.
right.
One needs to imbibe quantum. One needs to
Mm,
get into an understanding of social CRM, social relationships, social ecosystem, people to people, and a very, very strong understanding of how and at what level would you want to start making this technology available and democratized to people, which means you will have to this unfortunately, like a smart startup idea, would not be a native idea, but it would be a coexisting cohesively built ecosystem with a few partners coming in from society. You and me as an individual cannot come up with a
mm,
smart idea. It will have to be an ecosystem based idea, and it will have to be piloted at multiple levels before it becomes socially acceptable or financially viable. From a
right.
technology point of view, it needs to follow the same agile route to market in terms of building it, piloting it, democratizing it, and then making it commercial.
Right.
And to a
Thanks
lot
for
of
that.
startups in this space, Terence, the idea is always going to be come up with an idea that solves human problems, come up with an idea that elevates people's well-being, Come up with an
Mm.
idea that makes people feel special, people feel wanted, people feel empowered. If you're able to empower people and take away their challenges, I think the technology will stay. This technology is not about revolutionizing, is this technology is about enabling and empowering people.
Right, right. Yep. And again, for those of you who are tuning in at the moment and watching us, and especially Karthik kind of speak on the topic itself, remember, you can actually participate. You can get on board. You can pitch your business ideas to us here at LATOKEN and straight directly to the investors as well. Ask us how. Do contact us. The links are below. You can get into the ecosystem. You can listen to the advice. You can go on multiple pitches as well. So remember, the whole idea of us having VCTV is really to get you in front of the VCs faster than ever before. And these are the sound advice that they will give you as well. And kind of just following up on the points, Karthik, I mean, you as an investor itself, let's talk about you or even your peers investing in this transformative tech almost. What are your friends and even yourself as investors looking for in these new companies? Could you give them an idea at least?
Absolutely. Now, this the way we look at any technology evolution is, and specifically in the human spaces,
Hmm.
more often than not, technology comes up as a very generic omnibus which can solve a lot of problems. And then by the time from where it starts and by the time it ends, the end goal has completely changed. The barometer of evaluating its success has completely changed. In this particular space, you'll have to start with the end in mind. You'll have to come up with why are you getting into the space, and anybody who comes up with that, the end in mind, is where we would like to put our dollars. Specifically, for example, we've been talking to somebody which is trying to work on sleep monitoring patterns. A medical tech firm based out of India,
Hmm.
Chennai, is trying to work extensively with us on a sleep pattern monitoring algorithms, specifically for people who suffer from multiple chronic ailments, all the way from obesity to hypothyroidism, to people who suffer from anxiety and high blood pressure, to people who have cardiac challenges. Now that layers with a lot of understanding of not only the technical understanding but a very strong domain understanding, because we just came across around we were looking at five different use cases or five different simulations on sleep patterns. And then
Hmm.
when we worked with medical professionals, we realized that the moment you layer age, the moment you layer medical conditions, moment you layer gender, the moment you layer pre-operative situations, post-operative situations, you're talking about 200, 300 different patterns. Now that essentially can only come in when you understand the technology and its ecosystem in entirety. So we
Hmm.
typically have been funding this, which comes in with a lot of background work and an entire ecosystem around it. This is a very risky sector. If you were to smart guy who want to come up with an idea and say that I want to make sure that human beings can go to the sun without being burnt, one needs to find out how, if that might be a transformative technology, but is there a technology that you are ready to deliver? Have you done enough work on that? Do you have
Hmm.
empirical evidence to prove that? There is another very interesting technological space that we are talking about, and while I'm not at liberty to give you the name because of certain confidentiality clauses, it's
Hmm.
about the wellness and the fitness monitoring space. There was one pitch made on this on VCTV a few weeks ago, and
Right.
there's another big company based out of Middle East that's following up, which is about gamification of the entire wellness space,
Okay.
bringing in an element of cryptocurrency, bringing in an element of blockchain, and
Hmm.
gamifying the entire wellness space. Now that to me is a forced and an incentivized wellness that somebody is trying to create through the use of technology by creating hurdles and pit stops linked to wellness. It's not just
Hmm.
about physical space, it's about my water consumption, my nutrient consumption, my number of steps taken in a day, my number of people that I met, the number of hours that I slept, how much should I read, how much should I work. It monitors 80 different, no, 70 different interfaces that I do on a daily basis. And at every
Hmm.
milestone, it gamifies my success and it rewards me, and then it materializes or commercializes my reward at certain milestones. Now that makes the entire wellness journey absolutely smooth. A startup that came into existence in 2018, Terence,
Mm.
with just about 40,000, no, 20,000, $30,000 today has already reached Series B with 6 million funding, already has 300,000 active users on the platform. Now, that is a kind of business that we are talking about, which is transformative.
Great. I think that's a great way to for
That's the kind
startups
of
to kind of
that's
look
the kind
at.
of wellness space that we are looking at.
Right.
Wellness in terms of cohabitation or wellness space, wellness tech in terms of stay and getaway or travel, wellness in the travel space. There are a lot of
Mm.
businesses that have been building onto it, integrating technology with well-being. Company based out of South Africa has been using the natural route to wellness and
Mm.
building technology around it, taking people on a particular travel ecosystem for 45 days and monitoring their indexes and monitoring the quality of life and then releasing them back into the normal life with a completely changed you. Uses technology to stimulate the entire well-being in that 45 days. Now that is a transformative tech. We are on the verge of, wouldn't say that we are closing a deal onto them, but we are trying
Mm.
to negotiate a takeover by another business or by another healthcare group, which is going
Mm.
to invest typically anything between 40 to 60 million in this business.
Oh, that's great. That's
So
great
that's,
news,
that's, that's
actually.
so
Yeah.
it's already what started as a 10-member team is already a 600 employee wellness environment built. It's typical. It's like a 300 room resort which can take care of up to 200 participants at any given point in time. And people are willing to pay for this kind of a transformation. People are willing to pay for this kind of wellness. So this is where technology comes into play.
Right. That's pretty much mindful travel and wellness put together right there itself. But again, do you see like a niche where some of the startups and companies can kind of come in? Because during this discussion now, I think we've spoken about lots of companies coming in that human purpose and performance stage, emotional wellness stage, and even a little bit on mental well-being. But is there any other niches that you think they can kind of also cover in this
There is a lot of
space?
fitness space still available. Fitness,
Mm.
very regionalized fitness, and there are only two players that I know in a very regionalized spirituality space. I generally don't open up that into tech space because it's a very controversial space, so I would still stay out of it. But wellness and fitness tech space is still something where a lot of small startups with very limited budget, very limited infrastructure, but with an idea to make fitness global can come in. Or what we call as equipment-less fitness or tech-less fitness, as we call it, is
Mm.
where there's a lot of scope for partners, small businesses to come in. People can come into what we call as a lifestyle monitoring space. Now, lifestyle monitoring space would always require human because artificial intelligence still hasn't been able to build that level of personalization. Terence and Karthik might have very different ways of living. So, putting a robot behind to do a mapping of the lifestyle and recommending who is good and who's bad, it's still a generation or two away. But that tech space of monitoring lifestyle, monitoring indexing is a very, very low cost tech. And I see a lot of what started as a nutritionist platform 4 5 years ago have now become wellness platforms across the world. And today, if you look at any ecosystem, you would see scores and scores of apps. All of them are trying to commercialize it from day one. But there are very few club makers. There's a Gen XX app, which is
Mm.
typically primarily trying to monitor your wellness. Very small ecosystem, very personalized ecosystem, stays with you round the clock. Your personal well-being monitor or personal well-being manager intervenes with you at different point in time, and all it requires is a digital interface with a battery of people, a typical wealth manager or a typical wellness manager that you have behind. There's a lot of development happening in this space, especially with the kind of lifestyle that we need. If we need a driver, if we need a coach, if we need a tutor, if we need a cook, if we need a maid, if we need a wealth manager, we definitely need a wellness manager. The transition from the human wellness manager to the machine as a wellness manager is the journey that we need to bridge. And the company that is able to bring it as close to a machine as a wellness manager is the one that's likely to succeed in this space.
Mm. Thank you, Karthik. And again, for all of you listening out there from wherever you are, you heard it here on VCTV. Now, I'm going to put in a pitch there for you. If you think you have a business and that business is well within the space where you need the advice of the VCs that you see here today, you want to know how does it work? How do they select some of the startups, or how do they invest in some of the business? Now you can make that minute count. Currently it's hard to travel. This is one of the good platforms for you to really talk directly to your VCs, and also remember connecting with your audience and who you have backing you from behind. So do approach us. Again, you can find us on our main page, and we are all over socials as well. If you're on YouTube, like, subscribe, and click that bell icon as well so that you don't miss out on any shows. And if you are on our main link, again, remember you can see a list of all the VCs and investors and those speakers that we have on the shows today. So, Karthik, before we leave, we have a few minutes left. Any advice for the startups coming up, looking at you and wanting to hear more from you? What would you tell them?
The startups today need to know that the world of VCs have changed. In the past, the VCs did not either have time to look at the proposals, or VCs looked at proposals primarily basis only how smart your idea is. But today, you might have a very average or an intermediate idea, and VCs would be able to not only build onto the idea but even sharpen the entire business proposal to you, because today the VCs are a little more equipped. They are not just a money bag for you, they are a resource pool. Go to a right VC and incubator who's going to give you infrastructure, going to give you technology, who's also going to give you a lot of IPR and knowledge onto the table, because we don't expect you to come up with everything. We expect you
Hmm.
to come up with a good idea, a scalable business proposition, a good heart and a very, very clean mind, and a desire and a promise to deliver on what you wish to get into. We do not like to look at businesses which come in with an idea but have absolutely no abilities to back their aspirations. We do not like to get into businesses which are typically about, I am here to show you the money and show me a valuation game, do a 5x, and then try and throw me out of the business. I can invest my money on somebody else and get better returns out of it. Come to us with an idea, come to us with a business proposition. Let's work together. It's not a VC versus a startup, it is a VC and a startup. We are in the coexistential space where we grow together. You grow, we grow. If we fund, you grow. So it's not either of us, it's all of us together. More importantly, we see a lot of ideas coming to the table, Terence. And trust me, when I talk about a lot, I'm talking about more than 20 ideas a day. The
Hmm.
only ones that get picked up are the ones that have a business thought, a scale plan, a consistency plan, and most importantly, have been able to think ahead of time.
Hmm.
People who come back to us as a multiplier effect or a replicator or a me too idea at a lower cost are the ones that are deprioritized, because while they might have a good route to market, there's the dollar that's always supposed to go to somebody who comes up with a razor sharp innovation and an absolutely fine and perfect execution plan. Now, that
Hmm.
is what we expect from businesses. Do not expect that somebody is going to invest into your business because you come up with a fabulous route to market proposal and a gleaming strategy note. People are able to look through your decks and people are able to understand what is on the other side of the deck. What we really look at is scalability, consistency, and execution finesse.
Great. Thank you again, Karthik. And I think with that, ladies and gentlemen, it is time for us to end the show. You have heard what's needed. You know how to get in touch with us. Now, the next step is with you. So, again, connect with us, talk to us, and we can tell you more. And with that, Karthik, I hope to see you on the next show again. Thank you, as always.
Thank you so much.
And bye bye.
Absolute pleasure. Happy to support anybody who is in this space and who's looking for help. Happy to be in this space. Thank you so much.
Great.